All right, we are live. Welcome to a special episode of the Liz Wheeler Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live right here on X. We're live on Facebook. We're live on Rumble. It's good to see everybody. Now, you might have noticed that we did not have a show yesterday on Monday, as we typically do. And the exciting reason why we did not have a show yesterday was I was on a billion-hour-long flight, and we could not tape an episode yesterday. So this week, we will have live episodes for you today, Tuesday, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. So it'll be a special extra episode on Thursday. Make sure that you set your alarms and mark your calendars because you'll have an episode a little bit later in the week this week than you do typically. I'm going to wait for everybody to log on because we are going to jump right into the show today. As soon as everybody has a chance to join, you're not going to want to miss this episode, and we got to piece together this episode like a train so that everybody understands the what we're tracking here. So we're gonna wait just a moment for everybody to log on. How's everybody doing? The news never sleeps these days. You have I went on a 3-day trip across the country, and it's like there's a whole new load of information and stories and scandals to unpack. And so what we're gonna do today is we are going to talk about CIA headquarters. Inside the headquarters of the CIA, there's a vault. And inside this vault, there is a lockbox. It looks like a little gun safe. And it's locked inside the vault. It is a safe inside a vault, or a safe inside a safe. And it has been called the Turducken safe. The New York Times actually dubbed it the Turducken safe. Now, what does that mean? What is a turducken safe? Well, what is a turducken? A turducken is a cooked turkey stuffed with a cooked duck, which is stuffed with a cooked chicken. So it's a chicken inside a duck, inside a turkey. It's like a Russian doll, inside, more and more. That's essentially what the CIA safe is. A vault. It's a safe, a locked safe box inside a vault, inside the CIA headquarters, which is a vault in and of itself. And inside this Turducken safe in CIA headquarters is where the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Russiagate report was hidden. Now, this is the report that Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, declassified last week. This report, which was put together by then Chairman of the House Intel Committee, Nunes, and his Republican staff, this report was completed all the way back in 2018. So when I said last week on the show, listen, we've known about this scandal for almost a decade, since the coup attempt against President Trump was staged back in 2015, 2016, 2017. This is what I mean. There are bombshell smoking guns in this House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Russiagate report, and it's been sitting inside a safe inside the CIA for, what is it, 7 years? Now, you might be asking yourself, how did that happen and why? Well, I'm going to tell you. The director of the CIA under President Trump during his first administration was a woman by the name of Gina Haspel. We didn't hear a lot about Gina Haspel during Trump's first term. We're going to talk about who she is in just a moment and who her mentor is. But suffice to say, for the moment, the CIA director during President Trump's first term, Gina Haspel, refused to release and declassify the House Intel Committee's report on Russiagate, refused to give it to the public, even though the committee chairman, Nunes, only gave it to the CIA to make sure that there was no sources and methods that were betrayed in this otherwise classified report. He gave it to the CIA. He said, clear this so that we can release it. And what did Gina Haspel do? She stonewalled them. She hid this bombshell report inside the Turducken safe inside the CIA. As if that's not enough. You fast forward 2 years. The report was completed in 2018, given to the CIA for clearance. CIA Director Gina Haspel stonewalls and refuses to clear the report. 2 years later, in 2020, the White House, Donald Trump is president of the United States. It's during campaign season. He's running against Joe Biden. And before the election, the White House gave a directive to the CIA. Remember that the CIA falls under the executive branch of the government. The president of the United States is the chief executive, meaning he has jurisdiction over the executive branch of the government, the CIA being part of that. The White House, the Trump administration, orders in 2020, months before the election, orders the CIA to release the House Intel Committee's report on Russiagate. And CIA Director Gina Haspel, who had been nominated by President Trump, she serves at the pleasure of him, the president. She refused to comply again with the president's order. That's the setup for what we're going to be talking about today on the show. Now, remember last week, you remember the deep state villain that we unmasked last week, Obama's CIA director, John Brennan. Well, John Brennan played a pivotal role in the creation and the execution of this coup attempt against Donald Trump. Again, he played a pivotal role in the Russiagate conspiracy. And it makes sense when you look at John Brennan's background. As we exposed last week, John Brennan once voted for a communist for president. In the year 1976, John Brennan cast his vote for a communist, a member of the Communist Party in the United States, a man named Gus Hall. 4 years later, after John Brennan cast his vote for a communist for the president of the United States, John Brennan joined the CIA. And it was during a polygraph test that John Brennan was subject to upon entering the CIA, as all new CIA recruits are subject to, that he admitted to the CIA that he had voted for a communist. The question was, have you ever taken part in any activities that are subversive to the United States? And John Brennan said, well, yeah, I voted for a communist in 1976. And the CIA let him enter anyway. John Brennan dismisses this as, an indiscretion of his youth, but it was 4 years ago. 4 years before he joined the CIA it's hardly enough space. He's probably, as I said last week, he was probably wearing the same jacket. This is not exactly someone who 25 years later has had a reformation of their ideology. This is a couple years later. John Brennan voted for a communist and then joined the CIA. He then rose through the ranks of the CIA until he became CIA director under President Barack Obama. And almost immediately after taking the helm at the CIA, John Brennan was caught allowing his employees at the CIA to hack into and spy on the computers of Senate staffers, because those Senate staffers were conducting an investigation into potential wrongdoing that John Brennan himself had been a vociferous defender of. After 9/11, the CIA ran enhanced interrogation programs. It's essentially the waterboarding of the terrorists that happened at CIA black sites all around the world. John Brennan was always in favor of this. He was a big defender of this. When the Senate oversight, or the Senate in their oversight capacity, was investigating, were there abuses within the enhanced interrogation program of the CIA, John Brennan didn't like that he was being investigated because he had been such a big defender of this program, and he allowed his agency to hack into the Senate computers to see exactly what they knew about what the CIA did or not. So John Brennan is not only motivated, or at least was at one point, by communist ideology, which he admits. He's also a despicable individual who has no boundaries and no respect for the boundaries of the law. If he sanctioned the hacking and spying on Senate staffers because they dared to exercise their role in the Senate and conduct oversight of abuses within the CIA. He's an individual. I called him last week. I said he was a Machiavellian political actor. And what I mean by that is he is someone who embodies the phrase, the ends justify the means. He does not care if his actions are harmful, if his actions are illegal, if his actions are immoral, as long as he is able to secure the goal that he seeks. He's a despicable individual. And he was a big part, by the way, as I mentioned before, he was a pivotal part of the Russiagate conspiracy. He was part of Barack Obama's secret meeting in the Situation Room at the White House on December 9th, 2016. December 9th was the day after December 8th, obviously. On December 8th, the intel community, this is a month after President Trump had defeated Hillary Clinton. On December 8th, the intel community had produced an assessment that said, actually, Russia did not play any material role in hacking our elections, influencing our elections, or supporting President Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. But Barack Obama and his cronies, his crime crew, didn't want that assessment to be made public. So instead of briefing then President-elect Donald Trump with that assessment from the intel community, Obama and James Comey, the FBI director, and Jim Clapper, the DNI, and John Brennan, the CIA director, and Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director, and Loretta Lynch, the attorney general, and a whole host of upper echelon officials from the Obama administration got together in the White House. Obama convened them in the Situation Room, and they decided to pull the president's daily briefing. They weren't going to tell Trump the truth about what the intelligence community had assessed, that Russia played no role in his election. And instead, they decided to lie. They decided to manufacture a new intelligence community assessment that said what they wanted to be true. They manufactured the lie that Russia helped Trump, that Vladimir Putin favored Trump and took actions to help Trump defeat Hillary Clinton. And that's why they said Donald Trump actually defeated Hillary. John Brennan was not only part of that meeting, that secret meeting in the Situation Room on December 9th, 2016, it was John Brennan personally, in the days and weeks after, who deliberately chose, he was in the phrase, the buck stops here. It was John Brennan who ultimately made the decision to use unreliable sources in the new manufactured intelligence community assessment that said, actually, Russia did help Trump. Brennan chose personally to use unreliable sources like Igor Danchenko or the Steele dossier. And it was Brennan personally who denied, he refused to include in the manufactured intelligence community assessment exculpatory sources, actual reliable sources that contradicted this lie that Russia helped Trump defeat Hillary. John Brennan additionally blocked the release of senior CIA analysis. These are senior officials in the CIA who told John Brennan, listen, we have no evidence of Russia favoring Trump. And it was John Brennan who specifically, personally blocked the release of that senior CIA official analysis. We covered that last week. So now we get to Gina Haspel. Gina Haspel, who served as the CIA director under President Trump from 2018 to 2021. Gina Haspel was a mentee of John Brennan. John Brennan was her mentor. And I'm going to tell you what you need to know about Gina Haspel. Today's episode is sponsored by All Family Pharmacy. Medical freedom means you get to decide what's best for your health, not the government, not big pharma, certainly not your insurance company. That's why I love what All Family Pharmacy is doing. They're changing the way that people get their medication. So no insurance, no gatekeepers, no Dr. Fauci, just fast, affordable access to the medications that you trust, shipped right to your door. Here's how it works. First, you go online to their website and you select the medications that you need. Then a licensed doctor reviews your order and writes you a prescription for that medication. Then your medications ship straight to you. That's it. It really is that simple. They've got the essentials. They have medications that have been subject to political gatekeeping, like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. They have antibiotics, which are sometimes threatened by our supply chain. We rely on China, for example, to get our antibiotics. Well, I'd hate to know what will happen if China decides to cut off that supply. They have medications. Listen, if you're into biohacking, they have methylene blue and NAD and over 200 different medication options. And yes, every single order includes the prescription. If you believe in medical freedom, like I do, and I know you do, then this is your kind of pharmacy. They exist because they respect your medical freedom. So check them out. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. Use code Liz10 to save 10% off your order. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. Okay, so Gina Haspel, who served as President Trump's CIA director from 2018 until January of 2021. That would be when President Trump left office. She's not only a mentee of Obama's CIA director, John Brennan. If you want an accurate illustration or picture of Gina Haspel's character, who is she? What's her ideology? What does she stand for? What informs her behavior? This is what you need to know. Gina Haspel threatened to resign as CIA director if President Trump appointed Kash Patel as her deputy. Let me repeat that. Gina Haspel, President Trump's CIA director, threatened to resign if Donald Trump appointed Kash Patel as her deputy. That right there is really all you need to know about the woman. But there's more. In 2016 and 2017, this is just before she was nominated by President Trump to be CIA director. She was, of course, in the CIA at the time. In 2016 and 2017, Gina Haspel was the CIA station chief in London under John Brennan. You remember that London was the hub of the shady, fake intel world, the Christopher Steele world, where Christopher Steele collected all of his fake and salacious allegations against Donald Trump that weren't true, with which he populated the Steele dossier, which was used by John Brennan in the manufactured intelligence community assessment, which was used as the pretext of trying to take Trump out, the coup attempt against President Trump. Now, I have to tell you something. I have to make an admission here. I'm ashamed of this. I am ashamed to say that when President Trump nominated Gina Haspel for CIA director in 2018, I was supportive of that nomination. In my defense, I suppose I didn't know that much about her. I didn't know at that time as much about the weaponization of the intel community as I do now. And my support for her was on a very narrow grounds. It was on the grounds that Gina Haspel wasn't a wussy about enhanced interrogation. You remember the context of the times when we were fighting jihadists. And we had a president, Barack Obama, who refused to even say the phrase radical Islam. As these radical Islamists were waging terror attacks against us, committing jihad against us, killing us in the name of their religious beliefs, Obama refused to say radical Islam because he didn't want to feed into Islamophobia. He refused to name the threat that was killing Americans. And this was a divide in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. You remember, Republicans wanted Obama to say radical Islam. Democrats were more worried about offending peaceful Muslims than they were about actually protecting Americans. And that debate overflowed into what the tactics that the intel community and the military should be using to fight against radical Islam. And Republicans at that time were generally supportive of enhanced interrogation. And enhanced interrogation is mostly waterboarding and other pretty tough interrogation tactics. But the left would always say that's torture. It's ineffective. They shouldn't be treating terrorists like that. And it was really disheartening at the time to see how many Democrats made it their primary pet project to condemn enhanced interrogation while refusing to say the words radical Islam. So Gina Haspel in 2018, when President Trump, during his first administration, nominated her to be CIA director, again, I'm ashamed to say it, I was supportive of her narrowly on the grounds that she didn't seem to be a wussy about enhanced interrogation. I was like, finally, someone who's not afraid to say, actually, that's a tactic that, like, it's okay to use on terrorists. Now, of course, ultimately, during her confirmation hearing, she backed away from that. She actually was a wuss in her stance on enhanced interrogation. So the reason that I was supportive of her, she ended up erasing the moment that she was questioned by the U.S. Senate, which is infuriating. It's infuriating. However, all of that being said, once Gina Haspel was confirmed as CIA director, and this happened almost immediately after her confirmation, Gina Haspel became in possession of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence reports on Russiagate. How did she come into possession of this report, the same report that Tulsi Gabbard declassified last week? How she became in possession of this report when she had nothing to do with writing it, she had nothing to do with this investigation. Well, after Devin Nunes, who was the chairman at the time of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, after they completed this report, they gave it to the CIA. Why would you give it to the CIA? Well, they gave it to the CIA in good faith because they didn't want to release any information to the public that would harm the public. The argument, of course, is that if something is declassified by the United States government, yes, we get to see it, and we would love full transparency, but if we get to see something, then our enemies also get to see that thing. And so the CIA was tasked with analyzing whether the information in that report, if released to the public, would cause any harm to Americans here or abroad or our interests. You can make an argument that that's a fair thing to do. We don't want to give our enemies information that can harm us. At the same time, of course, our intel community has widely abused this privilege. They use this sources and methods, I always call it. We got to protect our sources and our methods so that our enemies don't know. They use this as an excuse to keep information classified that they simply don't want you to know about. And that's what Gina Haspel did. When Devin Nunes sent her this report, he didn't keep a copy of it. Reportedly, according to my sources, he did not keep a copy of it for the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. He sent the entirety of the report to the CIA. It wasn't in his hands anymore. And Gina Haspel, remember, the Turducken safe, inside the vault, which is the CIA headquarters in and of itself, there is another vault. And inside that vault is a lock box. It's like a gun safe in which the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Russiagate report lived. Now, when Republicans lost control of the House in 2018, Devin Nunes was no longer the chairman of that committee. The new chairman of that committee was a Democrat from California, named Adam Schiff. And Adam Schiff strongly opposed Gina Haspel analyzing and releasing the committee report. Gina Haspel also strongly opposed releasing the report, although it seems audacious that she should have such a political opinion inform her behavior as CIA director. But of course, her politics became clear very shortly thereafter. President Trump in 2020 ordered Gina Haspel as his CIA director to release this report, to declassify it. And Gina Haspel defied President Trump. She obviously blocked the report's release because she wanted to help Joe Biden's candidacy, and she wanted to protect John Brennan, who is her mentor. Okay, so we've gotten this far. And this is where I start to have a problem. This is where there's something that I have to tell you I don't understand. Let me lay this out for you. This House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence report that was written in 2018 by then Chairman Devin Nunes and his Republican staff, which was given to the CIA for approval so that it could be released. You're tracking me on all these things. We're all tracking here. Here's where we get to the part that I do not understand. Let me zoom out here for a minute to explain this. There's a man by the name of Fred Fleitz. I've known him for a long time, actually. He is the former chief of staff for the National Security Council during President Trump's first term in office. And he wrote a piece on American greatness titled 5 Crucial Facts from the House Intel Report on 2016 Russian Interference. And it's a great piece. I highly recommend that you go read it. It's not only factual, it also gives you a peek into the internal workings, what was happening behind the scenes in the White House, as the White House sort of worked with Congress and against the deep state and the intel community at that time. I will link it on my social media because I want you to read this piece. It's a very good piece. Let me read 3 separate excerpts, 2 of which I've been obsessing about for the past 24 hours. And that's we'll get to the part that confuses me. But let me read this first. Fred Fleitz writes, the House Intelligence Committee report was stuck for years in the Turducken safe at the CIA for political reasons and due to CIA Director Gina Haspel's inept and partisan leadership. Although the House report was completed by the summer of 2018 and considered an important and damning indictment of the Obama administration and U.S. intel agencies for politicizing intelligence to promote the Russia collusion hoax, House Republicans and the Trump White House were unable to convince CIA Director Gina Haspel to declassify and clear the report for release to the public. Then House Intel Committee Chairman Nunes sent the report to the CIA for clearance in the summer of 2018. The CIA dragged its feet in clearing the report and failed to do so before Nunes lost the committee chairmanship in January of 2019 due to the Democrats winning control of the House in the 2018 election. After Congressman Adam Schiff succeeded Nunes as chairman of the House Intel Committee, the CIA refused to clear the report because Nunes was no longer the chairman and Schiff would not sign off on Nunes's release request. Because of the confusing politics, Flights writes, and competing jurisdictions over the House report, it was kept at the CIA in a safe within a safe, leading the New York Times to call this the Turducken safe, a gun box-like container controlled by the House Intelligence Committee's Republican members and located inside a CIA vault. The House Intelligence Committee's Republican members refused to grant Democratic committee members access to their safe or allow them to review the report. Haspel and NSA Director Paul Nakasone also objected to releasing the report, claiming it would reveal sensitive intelligence. In addition, Haspel and Nakasone reportedly opposed releasing the House report because they asserted it contained unverified information and quote-unquote cherry-picked intelligence. Democratic Congress members also strongly opposed the release of the House Republican report. In opposing the report's release in late 2020, House Intel Committee Chairman Schiff charged that the report sought to whitewash Russia's election interference in the 2016 presidential election. Regardless of how ardently Haspel and Nakasone held their positions opposing the release of the House report, because the president is ultimately in charge of all U.S. intelligence and classification decisions, their refusal to cooperate with White House orders to release the report was, in my opinion, Flights writes, insubordination to a U.S. president. Moreover, DNI Gabbard's action this week proved there was no valid national security reasons not to release a declassified version of this report. Okay, let's stop right there for a second. As I said, this is a great article, and you should read it in its entirety. I've known Fred Flights for a really long time. He's extremely skilled at synthesizing complex information into a digestible report. And that is exactly what this article is. I will post a link to this article to my social media channels. That being said, there are 2 points within this article that I've been obsessing about for the past 24 hours. And as I said before, there's a portion of this entire Russiagate coup attempt against President Trump and this particular 2018 House Intel report that I cannot make sense of. Let me read you these points. This is what Fred Flights writes. He goes, I am very familiar with the House Intelligence Committee report. I was permitted to read a classified version of the report when I served as Chief of Staff of the National Security Council in August of 2018. He goes on to say, I also discussed efforts by the White House to pressure the CIA to release the report a month before the 2020 presidential election with the late Lou Dobbs. This reportedly included President Trump visiting the CIA to retrieve the report personally. End quote. When I say that I have been obsessing about these 2 points, let's address them one by one, because I do not understand. Let's start with this first part. Fred writes that he saw the report in 2018. And when he says that, I want to make one thing very clear. There have been many, many people who have had access to viewing this report. This was not compartmentalized the way that Obama and Brennan compartmentalized the manufactured intelligence community assessment. You know, there were 5 CIA analyst and one principal drafter of that fake and phony intelligence community assessment that they used to start the Russiagate hoax. That's not how this intelligence committee report was. There were a lot of people who had access to that report. People in the White House, Republicans on the House Intel Committee, all of their staff, and I don't understand. I don't understand. Let's start here. How can a CIA director refuse an order from the White House? This order from the White House. I don't understand this. If the CIA director serves at the pleasure of the president, and the CIA is part of the executive branch of the government, and the president is the chief executive, how can a CIA director refuse an order from the White House? I don't understand why this subversion wasn't made public in 2020. There was like one reporter, Paul Sperry, who was tweeting about this back in 2020, but why wasn't this put on blast? Why wasn't this like the issue of 2020? This report of President Trump considering going to the CIA headquarters to retrieve this report himself, why didn't he? Why didn't he go into the CIA and get this himself? If he's the chief executive, the CIA is part of the executive branch, he has jurisdiction over the CIA, and the CIA was in possession of this report. Why didn't he go get it? And if for some reason he was simply literally unable to access this vault because he didn't have the code or the key to the vault or the code or the key to the lockbox inside the vault, why didn't he put Gina Haspel on blast for this? Or maybe this is an obvious question. Why didn't he fire her? If she was defying him, subverting him, why didn't he fire her? And maybe the answer to that is, oh, if he fired her, then they were worried that there'd be destruction of evidence or that no one would ever be able to retrieve this report. Okay, then why didn't President Trump send someone in to retrieve it? And when I say that, do not misinterpret what I'm saying. Why didn't he appoint, for example, Kash Patel as her deputy, who would have the authorization to actually retrieve it? You tell me. Someone tell me, please. I don't understand this. I don't understand how a CIA director can refuse a White House order. I don't understand why this subversion was not made public constantly and loudly in 2020. I don't understand why, if it's possible for the president to go to the CIA, I don't understand why Trump discussed this and didn't do it. I don't understand why he didn't fire her. I don't understand why he didn't appoint someone to have the authority to go in and retrieve that report. I don't get it. I don't get it. And then this other point that Fred Fleitz made about seeing the report just reminded me of how many people had access to seeing this report back in 2018. And again, I don't understand. Why did nobody who had seen the report in 2018 blow the whistle on it? You can use the word leaked if you want to use the word leaked. I know it has a derogatory connotation to it, but once it became clear, or especially once it became clear that Gina Haspel was acting in a partisan manner, refusing to grant the request of Devin Nunes because she didn't want the report to be declassified, once it became clear that the CIA was subverting the White House, why didn't somebody who had access to this report blow the whistle on it? Now, I have to tell you, a source I spoke to yesterday who was among the many who actually physically saw the report in 2018, I posed that question to this person. And this person said to me, well, leaking classified information is unethical and it's illegal. Okay. That's true that leaking classified information is illegal, but I still don't understand this. Leaking classified information is a standard that we invented. Not that the United States was the first country to make the leaking of classified information illegal, but I'm talking mankind. We invented this. This is a civil invention. It has no inherent leaking classified information or not is not something that deals with natural law. This has no inherent morality or immorality to communication of different information. But a coup attempt against our government, again, I don't understand. The people that saw this report, don't you have a duty to the president and to the United States Constitution? And does that duty to the US Constitution not supersede the duty not to release classified information? Isn't protecting our country when our country is facing an existential threat a higher moral duty than not blowing the whistle on an attempted coup, the coup that poses the existential threat to our very nation? I understand what I'm saying right now, just so you know. Sure, I'm calling for civil disobedience. I get that. But this is my question to all the people who viewed the report back in 2018. There are so many people who viewed that report. Sure, I'm calling for civil disobedience. Let me say that again. Here's my question to you. At what point is civil disobedience warranted, if not in this circumstance? I have to tell you, this entire revelation that CIA Director Gina Haspel was hiding this report in a Turducken safe within a vault inside the CIA headquarters, and that dozens and dozens and dozens of people all the way back in 2018 had read this report, meaning they understood that there was irrefutable evidence that Obama and Brennan and Comey and Clapper and Loretta Lynch and Andrew McCabe and all the rest had weaponized the power of the federal government, had lied and used those lies to justify the intelligence community spying on a duly elected president in order to try to take him out. The fact that dozens and dozens and dozens of people knew about this and didn't blow the whistle on it, this makes me so cynical sitting here today. This is why I've been obsessing about those two lines in Fred Fleitz's articles for 24 hours, because all I can think of is, did these people sit on this report because they feared going to jail? Since, yes, it is against the law to leak classified information. Is that why they didn't do it? Was it naivete? Did they think that Gina Haspel would actually clear it for release? Listen, I guess it's easy for me to sit here and say, I would have leaked it when I'm on the sidelines and not the one facing potential jail time. But I have to say, I would like to think that our politicians have the same sacrificial mindset of our military service members, willing to give up their life for love of their country. But I don't think our politicians and our government officials are actually willing to do that. I don't think they are. Don't we have whistleblower protection laws? When you're inside the government and you see a crime being committed by the government, isn't it your duty to expose that? And don't we have laws in place if it requires you to violate laws against the disclosure of classified information, that you are protected from being prosecuted for doing that? But also, is there anybody who would have been willing to face a risk to do what was right? There were 13 Republicans in 2018 on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. There was the chairman, Devin Nunes, Mike Conway from Texas, Peter King from New York, Frank Lobiondo of New Jersey, Tom Rooney of Florida, Alina Ross-Letian of Florida, Michael Turner and Brad Wenstrup, both from Ohio, Chris Stewart of Utah, Rick Crawford of Arkansas, Elise Stefanik of New York, Will Hurd of Texas, and Trey Gowdy of South Carolina. And all of their staff as individual members of Congress and all of the staff on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. And nobody said a word. Why weren't there any criminal referrals sent to the Department of Justice by the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence? Not only should this have been voted on by the whole group, why was there not a criminal referral sent by any one of these individual members of Congress? They had 2018, 2019, and 2020 when President Donald Trump was the president of the United States. This is one of those times when I cannot fathom how people religiously adhere to the idea of customs and norms. Like, yeah, I get it that it is customary on these committees that individuals do not take action, do not take rogue action, that they adhere to the majority vote of their committee. I don't care if that's the norm. I don't care if that was the custom. At what point, again, I can only phrase it in that same way. At what point is civil disobedience justified if not in this circumstance? I feel like we've lost sight in our country of the morality of following a law or the morality of deliberately disobeying that law. And maybe this is a much deeper problem. Maybe this is a much more philosophical problem. Maybe this reflects the religious apathy that is an epidemic in our country right now. But when a law is fundamentally unjust, sometimes that not only gives you morally the permission to violate that law, it calls you. You have a duty to violate that law. Like COVID. Think about back in 2020 and 2021 when there were COVID laws there was no justification for these laws. And I'm not just talking about in the practical sense, right? You can make an argument that, well, practically, the public health administration community knew that masks did not stop or slow the spread. And so it was a stupid, pointless law. Great argument. I agree with you. But there's also a matter of whether a law is just. And when I say whether a law is just, I'm not just talking about whether a law is fair or whether a law is stupid. I'm talking about whether a law is in alignment with natural law or whether it is a contradiction of natural law. I'll give you a specific COVID example. When I was living in the state of California in 2020, during the COVID lockdowns, Governor Gavin Newsom had locked the entire state down. We were not allowed to go to Mass. As Catholics, we were not allowed to attend Mass, even though it is our obligation as Catholics to attend Mass every week. If we as Catholics, and the Catholics sitting here with me today know this, if we as Catholics choose not to go to Mass and not to receive the Eucharist just because we don't feel like it, it puts us in mortal sin. We have a God-given right to go to Mass. A government official cannot supersede or violate that right. So what we did in California is we violated the lockdown rules and the social distancing rules, and we had mass in our home because I felt no moral obligation to follow a law that was unjust. Not just stupid, not just unpractical, but a violation of natural law, a violation of justice with a capital J, God's justice. Don't you think that that analysis applies here? I completely understand that we have to respect civil laws in our country if we want to live in a civilized society. I get that. I'm on board with that. There are laws that I think are stupid that I comply with because I'm a member of this society, and these laws, while maybe I think they're stupid, we can't have every single law analyzed on an individual basis, and whether we think they're stupid or not, and choose not to follow the stupid ones. We have to have a collective agreement that unless a law is unjust, we're going to follow the laws. Otherwise, laws mean nothing. We have no order. We are a chaotic society. I get that. But at what point, when a norm or a standard or a custom or even a law against leaking classified information, I would call it civil disobedience, blowing the whistle. At what point do you engage in civil disobedience if not now? Was this coup attempt against President Trump not an existential threat, not just to Trump himself, not just to the voters who democratically elected him, but to our very form of self-government? I don't understand how a CIA director like Gina Haspel can subvert a president's order to release this document. And once that became clear, that a deep state swamp creature who was leading the intel community was subverting the president, I don't understand why there wasn't anybody who had viewed that report and the contents of that report who were willing to blow the whistle on it. It has been left to rot in the bowels of the CIA for 7 years. For 7 years, the American people have been deprived of the knowledge that they had a right to have access to. That there were bad actors who were trying to take over their government. I would love to hear, not just from you, I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from anybody who works with classified information, who has worked with congressional reports that contain classified information, and specifically that worked with the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence report of 2018 on the Russiagate conspiracy. I would love to hear from you on this, because I don't understand. If not this, when? Let me just say this. We are not done. Not even close. The left thought that we would stay quiet, give up, let them reshape America without any resistance. But they were wrong. More and more people are waking up. They're seeing through the lies, recognizing the depth of the damage, and yearning for and returning to truth. We're not backing down. On the Liz Wheeler Show and across Blaze TV, We will hold the left accountable. We will bring you the truth. Supporting Blaze TV is not just about a subscription. It's about standing up and being a part of this movement. It's about saying no to the chaos, but also about saying yes to fighting for the truth, for freedom, and for our country. It's just $8 a month when you use promo code Liz. That's $20 off the annual plan. For the math nerds, that's just 26 cents a day to support voices that are speaking up when no one else will. Go to blazetv.com/Liz and join us today. I really appreciate it. We don't need to shout louder. We need to stand stronger in the face of corruption. That's blazetv.com/Liz. Please subscribe to the show at youtube.com/Liz Wheeler, at x.com/Liz_Wheeler. And we have video on Spotify now. Go to Spotify and search The Liz Wheeler Show. Hit that subscribe button. You can leave a comment under each individual episode over there on Spotify too. And I've been reading those comments. I greatly appreciate them. I'm going to post the link to the article that Fred Fleitz wrote on American greatness. It's worth reading every word of it. I'll post that across my social media platforms this afternoon. But I do not understand. How could people who have seen this report not blow the whistle on it when they realized it had been sent to the bowels of the CIA to die? Would you have leaked it? Would you have engaged in civil disobedience? Would you have blown the whistle? We have a lot more for you coming up this week. Again, we didn't have a show yesterday because I was on an insanely long flight. We have a show today. We'll have a show tomorrow, which is Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We will also have a show on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. You do not want to miss. Make sure that you have not only clicked subscribe, but that you have your notification bell set, or your alarm on your iPhone. You can set it so that you do not miss us when we go live. We have much more on this topic and others later this week. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here as we unpack this threat to our country. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.